The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
Would you rather pay Lindholm or go scuba diving without oxygen?
I'm choosing Lindholm.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Kyle, you are a sick, twisted man, but maybe not as sick and twisted as you listen to right now. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks and also a Canucks writer since 2013, currently with Daily Hive Vancouver. Before we dive into today's episode, we got to give a shout out to you, okay, for tuning into Locked On Canucks, because guess what? It is your Canucks every damn day. Mm-hmm. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And hey, if you haven't done so already, make sure you go like, subscribe, comment, leave a review, do it all to the good of your goddamn heart on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And hey, if you are on YouTube, not only do you get to see the beautiful faces of Kyle Bowen and myself, but you can subscribe and help us get to 2K. We're a couple subscribers away from 2,000 right now. So fun times again. We started from the bottom. Now we're creeping up there.
Yeah, man.
We're working.
We're here. We're here in the moment. We're here in the moment. Okay.
Yeah.
Get us to 2,000 or get us to 1,961. It's all the same, baby.
On today's episode, we're going to talk about the Vancouver Canucks' number one priority this offseason and why it should be Elias Lindholm. We're going to make the case for the Canucks re-signing Lindholm, talk about some contract comparables, what that might look like for your Vancouver Canucks, and talk about whether or not it's actually possible for them to re-sign him. Before we get into that, you heard his sexy voice, but let me introduce him. Kyle Bowen. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Doing a lot better than I was yesterday. Already moving forward into what next season will bring. I've said this many times. I'm not watching the playoffs anymore. I'm just gearing up for next season, okay? I'm just like an athlete. I'm just like a player. 90% of these guys, when they get eliminated, they don't want to watch more games, okay? For real. Again, I'm a sore loser. It is what it is. Kyle Bowen, Trevor Beggs at the Don't Doze Art Lab. One left to that West Coast bias. One left to the studios. One left to the podcast network. And man, oh man, Trevor, can we start off with a boom? Can we start off with a bang? Okay, I thought I was going to go into this episode and mainly talk about how the Vancouver Canucks, can live without Zadorov or Joshua, but I don't think they can live without Elias Lindholm. But man, oh man, now my mind is doing this, and this is dark. This is extremely dark. This is when you're not playing hockey games and you're living in assumption. Would you rather have Elias Lindholm for a long time or Brock Besser? And are they going to have to pick one or the other? Because I forgot that Brock Besser, his contract is up in like 12 months or 13 months or 14 months. He's eligible for an extension in about 2 months. I guess I'm going to start there because this Elias Lindholm deal, it's pretty heavy if it happens.
Yeah, that's a great question. We did not prep for this, but I'm leaning Brock Besser. And maybe it's not the smart thing to do because I think logic dictates that you prioritize center over winger. But I look at the Canucks winger depth, and the Canucks they lack another top six winger, right? At least at center, they have Miller and Pettersson. Like Lindholm does seem like, we're going to talk about why he is the Canucks' number one re-signing option based on the players on this team. But at the end of the day, he's a little bit of a luxury piece, right? When you look at, the Canucks had Miller, Horvat, and Pettersson. Horvat was the luxury piece. He was expendable. Now they have Miller, Pettersson, Lindholm. Lindholm is a luxury piece. He is expendable. Now it's in the Canucks' best interest to keep him. We'll get into that. When I look at Lindholm versus Brock Besser, Brock Besser again hitting 40 goals for the first time. I think there's probably some regression in store there. But he had a great season, and I think his two-way game came miles and miles ahead. Like, he is the Canucks' best winger right now, right? With Miller and Pettersson down the middle, Brock Besser is this team's best winger, whereas Lindholm is arguably the third best center on the team, although he was probably the second best center in the playoffs for your Vancouver Canucks. So
by a landslide. He was the second best center by a landslide, man.
By a landslide. And even then, I think there's an argument that maybe he was better than Miller.
Damn, I know. He was really good. He was really strong. He was a playoff performer. He was a nuisance. He was useful everywhere. He really was. And he was clutch in the faceoff circle when needed to be, for real. There were points in games where a faceoff changed the fate of the game, and I felt as if Lindholm was on the good side of that. a lot of times. Man, oh man, the whole Brock Besser thing, I know now we're going all over the place. I'll say this. I don't think there's any regression in that guy's game. I think going into this season, there was already so much motivation for him to just focus on hockey and have fun out there. And barring how his season just ended, I feel as if he's going to come in even more motivated, okay? And on a contract year, I think the best is yet to come for Besser, is the best yet to come for Elias Lindholm. I best believe it, man. I think there's a lot of pride there. I look at the way the guy plays. I think he wants to put himself back on the map when it comes to being one of the best two-way players in hockey. And I look at the power the Canucks could have if they had Miller, Lindholm, and Pettersson down the middle. And a resurging Pettersson, right? Sprinkled into that mix again, bodes so well for a team that would probably be the number one team down the middle. I mean, going into last season, a lot of people liked Kopitar and Dubois and who's the other guy? Who's that two-way specialist out there? Philip Deneau. It's sexy from, again, if you're in the past, if you're not looking into what we saw from Dubois this season, that was a really sexy 3-center piece you got there. Bro, it's even more sexier with what the Canucks could do here. And I think I don't want to say the specialty, but the performance in the playoffs when Pettersson wasn't going from Lindholm, obviously it was important in this postseason, but man, oh man, if he brings that again when the games really matter and Pettersson wakes up, again, there's just, now let's say the word specialty here that other teams wouldn't be able to match, for real, if the Canucks were able to keep Lindholm. Now, I know the price would be crazy. I know you're going to talk about it. I know you think you have some numbers here and there, but I feel as if he's number one on the list. And if they have to lose Zadorov and Joshua for Lindholm, I think it's worth it.
And that's a bold take because, you know, if we're looking at fan favorites on this team, I would garner, and let us know in the comments wherever you're listening, whenever you're listening, I would garner that most fans prefer Zadorov and Joshua over Elias Lindholm. But let's bring it back to the playoffs, right? Because it's crazy that we're having this conversation, Kyle, because obviously in the regular season, this guy was pretty brutal for the Vancouver Canucks. Didn't seem to have a fit on the team. Really, Elias Pettersson in the playoffs looked like Elias Lindholm in the regular season. But as we know, come playoff time, Lindholm was an absolute beast for these Canucks. Winning faceoffs, going up against the other team's top lines, playing well, scoring goals when he had 5 goals, 10 points in 13 games there. He elevated his game. He was physically way more physical than he was throughout the season in general. But again, when it comes to price, is that enough for the Canucks to pay him close to $8 million a season? So I think that's what's going to cost to take Lindholm, to keep Lindholm. And you might say, and we'll talk about it more in the next segment, like taking a team-friendly deal perhaps. But man, oh man, when you look at some of the guys out there, centers who have signed contracts, I mean, look, Bo Horvat signed for $8.5 million, right? 8 years, $8.5 million with the New York Islanders. That was a guy who had never crested 70 points in a season before. Dylan Larkin with the Detroit Red Wings. Now he's a couple of years younger, but that's another player who he's never crested 80 points before, right? Something that Lindholm's done in his career. So, man, oh man, those are out there and what they've signed for. And I just think that the Canucks are going to have a hard time keeping Lindholm than closer to 8. Trevor. And I'm sure Lindholm's Cam, much like her other episode, are going to push for 8+.
Trevor, you might have to bounce in and out here because you're lagging like crazy. Anyways, Lindholm, again, an aggressive thing for me to say with the whole Dakota Joshua thing, right? Look at D. Anderson, number 49, with the comment. Okay, he disagrees with my statement about it being impossible to keep Joshua and Lindholm all together because Lindholm's quote-unquote star power, his pedigree, is going to push him over $7 million, right? I got to ask Trevor this question, okay? Maybe I'm just being delusional. Maybe I'm just, again, putting too much emphasis on this team's window, opening, but also being only open for a couple of years based on JT Miller's age, right? And the ability for this team to, again, be super, super, super extremely deep down the middle, which protects them from some sort of injury, right? Real talk, if one of them go down, at least you have 2 of them left. 2 really good centers, right? It's important. This window, again, 2 years long. I guess it gets me to this point. Am I jumping off the Dakota Joshua must-sign bandwagon based on what he did this year, based on the amount of hits he has, all that jazz, because I don't believe he can get better So that's why I got to ask you this question. Do you feel as if there's more potential in Dakota Joshua? And again, do you think it's possible to sign both? Because I don't. Joshua and Lindholm. I just don't.
I think it's possible to sign both, but it might mean cutting a guy like Philip Pronik for a draft pick, right? I mean, like the Canucks do have some flexibility. They have a lot of decisions to make here. Yeah, sure, you can keep Lindholm and Joshua, but you're probably losing Hronik and Zadorov, and then you're back to square one with, going to the season with 2 or 3 defensemen signed and Hughes, Susie, and Juleson. So the Canucks have some tough decisions to make, and before we get to the end of this week, I do want to do some more cap projections for this team. But a reason why I think Lindholm is a top priority for the Canucks is because this team might be in for a ruthless offseason ahead. And when you look at a guy like Lindholm, there are not a lot of players out there in the NHL who can be on your Selke ballot, can theoretically score 30 goals and 70 points. Now, will he hit his heights in Vancouver? Does that make him worth it? That's up for debate based on the regular season. But like we saw in the playoffs, Kyle, this guy, he makes the Canucks a better team and a better team at the right time of year. And he just brings so much to the table in terms of shooting ability, physicality, PK, faceoffs, matchups. I mean, this guy can do it all. He's a well-seasoned player. So, but you know what? I do think Dakota Joshua can get better too. Like Dakota Joshua's only had 2 full seasons in the NHL.
True.
I think there's another level to his game too. So,
Bro.
like I said, the Canucks got tough decisions to make. But why Lindholm should be the number one priority is because prioritizing star power. It's harder to replace Lindholm than it is like Joshua and Zadorov. As crazy as that sounds, because those guys are unicorns. You can find big physical players out there, but there's not a lot of guys like Lindholm in the NHL at that skill level.
Yeah. And that's what I put in the description of the episode too. Like it should be easy for Rutherford and Alvin to replace replaceable players. But then you just use the word unicorn, when describing Joshua and Zadorov, which I totally agree with. And if that's the case, is that really easy to replace? Is it? I know there are a lot of physical players out there, but the charisma they bring to the game, the energy, the intimidation, and also just their ability to be really good hockey players. Like there was a lot of specialty moments from those 2 players throughout this run, more so than Pettersson brought us, more so than Quinn Hughes brought us. When it comes to being spectacular, doing big things, putting the puck in the net. Like Dakota Joshua had 8 points in the playoffs, but I believe 6 of those points came in 2 games, right? But you can argue that even though that's the case, he helped this team, individually speaking, pick up 2 dubs, 2 playoff wins. I don't know what fancy stat that is, but that's huge. Again, all over the place. I'm all over the place. Now I'm kind of retracting my statement, right? Like I said it earlier, if the cost of keeping Lindholm is Joshua, they got to do it. Maybe, just maybe, I got to put my energy towards keeping both, and they can do it. I know they can do it. Okay, I have some of the cap numbers. We're gonna get to it on the other side, but I'll say this: it's time for us to act like the Vegas Golden Knights. Okay, it's time for us to act like the Tampa Bay Lightning. I know we haven't won Stanley Cups yet. But we gotta scheme here. Okay, we gotta act like the Chicago Blackhawks from way back in the day when it was just them focusing on how to restructure their cap and get by. Okay, we gotta put Ilya Mikheyev on LTIR. We got to convince the league that this guy is not the same player because his knee is not healed. You got to tell Mikheyev to, just rehab and be a black ace in the playoffs, okay? Take the whole year off. Be energized for April. We need to load up this team because it would be a damn shame if this team could not keep one of Lindholm or Joshua because they got Mikheyev on the Bucks. Anyways, Trevor, take it away.
Yep, that's a rough one for sure. And again, let's get into some of the cap numbers on the other side, and let's talk about the odds of them actually keeping Lindholm as well, and if he stays, what that contract looks like. So more Lindholm talk, some cap talk. Again, the Canucks are at the offseason, boo-hoo-hoo, sad times, but hey, so are 27 other teams, and the Canucks were one of 5 teams remaining at the end of the day. So hold your head up high. Lindholm offseason cap talk, trade talk on the other side here on Locked On Canucks after shouting out our friends over at Indeed. All right, you know the deal. There's no I in team, but there's one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform you need to build your team. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed is a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. Okay, one of the things I love about Indeed is that they make hiring all so easy, okay? Just move over Staples, Indeed. They owned that was easy button. Let's go. With Indeed, you can use instant match, and candidates you invite to apply are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search, according to US Indeed data. And when you get one step closer to the hire by immediately matching you with quality candidates. Indeed's hiring platform matches you with quality candidates instantly. Instant, baby. With Indeed, you can start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
People, we back doing this, and that's talking about your Vancouver Canucks in the offseason. Back to assuming, back to not watching hockey games. Yeah, man. Life as a fan, okay? For real. I'm getting over it slowly but surely. Almost there. Beggsy, I got to ask you the question. Are you over it? Like, how do you feel 2 days after the Canucks no longer are, not playing hockey anymore because they got eliminated by the Oilers? Come on, man. What a life, dude. 2 days ago was completely different. Unreal.
Yeah, I was so jacked up on that Monday afternoon. I was blasting the tunes on the deck, barbecuing, playing with my son. I was ready. I felt like I could have played Game 7, man. I was juiced up, and the juice was kind of gone after the first period when after that power play. But I feel okay, man. I mean, obviously you want to go on a longer run, but I'm a pretty optimistic guy in general, and man, oh man, I mean, for this team to win around and push the Oilers to 7 games. In a season where most people project them to miss the playoffs, how can you not be happy with that?
Damn. I don't know. It's tough. It's still tough. That being said, I think it'll be a lot easier if this team can keep Lindholm. Okay, we didn't bring this up yet. I don't want this team to take a step back. I really don't. I think it's easier for them to maintain the quote unquote level of excellence, if that's too strong of a word to use. I'm sorry. That they showed this year. I think it's easier if they're just deep down the middle. If they're just known as that team to have 3 really good centers. There's a lot of protection there and a lot of star power. And man, oh man, I do think that Lindholm can, get better. JT Miller got better. He's under Tocchet now, right, with Lindholm. Maybe he learns a thing or two. I don't know. Like maybe he has some support from Pettersson. Maybe he becomes actually optimal on the power play when it gets going, right? Like, do you think the ceiling can get higher for Lindholm than just 60 to 70 points? Is that still a possibility? Because I think so.
That's a tough one for me. I'm this team, like if he does resign with the Vancouver Canucks, I think the ceiling is probably a 30-goal player.
Okay, Trevor, your lagging is just ridiculous. It's ridiculous, man. Let me know in the comments below, okay? We're all over the place. Again, we're rattled from the playoffs. Our Wi-Fi is rattled right now. Can Lindholm give you more than he did in the playoffs in the regular season next year? Like, can he also be potentially the scoring is going higher in the NHL? Again, he can be on the power play. He can be a big thing here. Can he be a 75-point player? Can he be an 80-point player? Are there points in the season where him and Pettersson have insane amount of chemistry because now they're playing on a line together? You know how it goes, right? In the regular season, there's a lot of bouncing around. Can Lindholm get better with the Vancouver Canucks? And this is the other part of the equation too, man. You got to believe that in order for the Canucks to win a trade like this, and I don't know how many more trades Alvin can make of this capacity with that much arsenal going the other way. Extending Lindholm will allow them to win this trade. And if they let him go with just second round experience to show for, I feel as if this trade could really haunt the Canucks because, again, this team's window just opened up. I don't know how many more times you want to explode on the trade market with a first and a third and a prospect and a player, winning this trade seems important for the Vancouver Canucks to me.
Yeah, I don't think you can focus on the return so much, right? Like that's already said and done. It's in the past now. And thankfully, Lindholm made up for that with a bit of a better playoffs. But look, I don't think you sign the guy because you want to win the trade. Like that doesn't matter at this point. You sign the guy because he makes your team better. And again, I just look at the numbers, and I think it's gonna be hard to keep this guy under $8 million, right? And that's where the bar, the absolute ceiling for Lindholm has to be JT Miller's contract. Based on the internal cap of this team, based on the fact that he's likely a third line center, although he's probably still going to get like that Miller. 17 minutes. Yeah,
he can't make more than Miller.
He's going to get close to it, right? Like, yeah. I even look at Nazem Kadri. He signed, he basically, I don't want to say replaced Lindholm because they're on the same team for a bit, but $7 million a season with Calgary, right? After helping the Colorado Avalanche win the Stanley Cup after a career season. Look, Lindholm, based on his career trajectory, based on his age, is going to get more than that. So I think 7's the absolute floor. But look, you're going to look at guys like Horvat and Larkin, and Lindholm's going to say like, "Hey, I was right there." And again, I think the end of the regular season for him, this regular season, didn't help him out. That probably brings the number down a bit. But man, oh man, I think it's hard to keep him under $8 million. But let's say the contract is like 6 years, $7.8 million a season. Is he still your Canucks number one priority at that number? Because that's a realistic deal in my opinion.
Damn. Honestly, making 7.8 is too close to 8 for me, man, for Lindholm. I like the term, though. 6 years, it's a lot better than 8. I guess we got to ask this question, too, now, right? All over the place, but it's an important question. Like, are the Canucks sexy enough? Are they cool enough with only getting to the second round of the playoffs for players to take discounts? Because Lindholm is going to, like, if he hits the market, like, Columbus is throwing 8.5 at him. They're doing it. They're doing it. Yo, you never know. Maybe Boston does it. I mean, they went to the second round.
And they were rumored to be after him in the trade deadline too, right?
And if he goes to Boston, who's he playing with? He's playing with Pasternak. If he stays in Vancouver, who's he playing with? I mean, we don't know. We don't know, but it might be Garland. It's one of those things again. Like, do you think the Canucks again are cool again? So much, so cool throughout the league that players would be willing to take 20% off, not 20%, but like 10% off or something? Because, I mean, I'd like to think so, but it's only the second round, man.
Yeah, I think it depends on the player. Like, there's so many things to consider when you're signing a contract, right? Like, you're going to pay higher taxes, living in a Canadian city. But, you and me are biased. Vancouver is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. So depending on the player that they sign, if that plays into it, that's a factor too. It's like it's not like you're going to Edmonton or Winnipeg or one of those cities, right? But yeah, well, are they cool enough? I mean, I do think other teams around the league have taken notice of Vancouver Canucks. Again, they were the last team to be eliminated for round 2. By the time they got eliminated, there was only 5 teams left. Sorry, when they went to Game 7, there's only 5 teams left in the NHL. So it was a hell of a season for the Vancouver Canucks. I think teams and players see this as a team on the rise, and rightfully so. Obviously, got to retain some guys this offseason and hopefully add one more big fish, which I know we'll get to on another episode of Locked On Canucks as well.
Yeah, Trevor, you want to go through this with your hockey knowledge? Okay, we're pulling up the cap-friendly spreadsheet on what the Vancouver Canucks can do with their money, who's staying, who may be leaving, how many players they have on their active roster. Because to me, this is alarming. And when I look at that list again, I just see Lindholm as priority number 1. The whole Filip Hronek as an RFA thing, like, it's hard to see him go just because you rarely see RFAs go. But anyways, can you go through this list and just at the end of it, give me give me a guess of what you think the Canucks are going to do here after reading this list.
Yeah, and I'll tease for later this week. I will go through Cap Friendly and do some projections myself to look at what a ruthless offseason like, what a realistic offseason looks like for your Vancouver Canucks. But on the list here, you have RFAs. They're Phil Hronek and Archer Shilovs. Hronek's a fast-hitting one. I think we'll get into that one on another episode. Archer Shilov should be a relatively cheap deal. I know he had a great playoff run, but he still has less than 20 games of NHL experience. In terms of the UFAs, you have Teddy Blueger, you have Dakota Joshua, you have Sam Lafferty, Elias Lindholm, Ian Cole, Mark Friedman, Tyler Myers, Nikita Zadorov, and Casey DeSmith. So there's a handful, like, the defense could look drastically different. Ian Cole, Tyler Myers getting old. Zadorov is going to command a lot of money, as much as it would be nice for the Canucks to keep him. Do you pay Zadorov $6 million a season? I'm not sure about that. Beluga, I think at one point was looking like he was due for a hefty raise. Now, not so much. I think Lafferty's gone. So some tough decisions for the Canucks to make. But I'll show this comment quick before we get to break from Zest. Then maybe we'll get to a couple more comments on this side. And Zest says, why can't we sign all three of Zadorov, Joshua, and Lindholm? Don't we have $26 million in cap space? Yeah, theoretically you can, but it probably means you let a guy like Hronek walk, because you can't sign those three and then sign Hronek and then have money left over to fill out your roster. So if you want to include Hronek in that, Zadorov, Lindholm, Joshua, Hronek, you can't keep all four. So which of the three do you keep? And you might only ever keep two.
Yeah, because if you look at the list, like there's multiple fourth liners, there's depth defensemen, like number 5 defenseman, number 6 defenseman on this list. Like you got to replace players. You got to dress a full lineup, and the Canucks only have 14 players signed going into next season. Remember I kept saying cup or bust? I know I sounded crazy, but there was just a lot riding on the season. And again, the Vancouver Canucks chose to trade a lot of draft capital. Probably the most in the league over the last 12 months. So yeah, just a fascinating offseason coming up. But something tells me they're going to win the offseason, man. Rutherford, Alvin, and company, they're going to get the job done, man. It's going to be fascinating, but also excellent. And the Canucks are going to be back in the playoffs next year. Like people are talking about this whole Seattle comparison. It doesn't make sense. So we'll talk about that on the other side. Okay. Begsy, who we shouting out here on Locked On Canucks?
No one to shout out, just a little stretch break, pick the nose, and we'll be back on the other side here on Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every day.
People, we back here doing this on Locked On Canucks. Apologies for some of the Wi-Fi issues. It is what it is, man. It is what it is. It's I don't want to say it's karma for what happened to the Canucks in Game 7, but again, a lull is over the city. I know we're not as vibrant as we were 2 days ago. Our Wi-Fi is looking like that too. But man, oh man, all this assuming is definitely getting me a little bit more excited for what's to come in October with your Vancouver Canucks. So let's get to more of the comments before we get out of here and just ramble some more, Trevor. Okay, can we just hockey nerd out to end the show? Because my mind, again, is all over the place. Look at this comment from Zest. Okay, Lindholm is the most important signing. He's a must-sign player. You can get wingers, but getting centers is hard. Hey, speaking of getting wingers and not maybe prioritizing that in the offseason so much. That being said, Jake Gensel, he's a free agent. Okay? The Canucks supposedly are going to be ruthless this offseason, right? With some of the people they quote-unquote have to sign or bring back. AKA, I don't think they're bringing a lot of these guys back, because I think they want some cash on the side to try bringing Jake Gensel home to Vancouver. And maybe, just maybe, he plays with Pettersson, or maybe, just maybe, he plays with Lindholm. Let's resurface on this whole Gensel thing. How you feeling about that, Trevor?
Yeah, it's sorry, you cut out for a bit for me there, but yeah, sorry, you got
Gensel to the Canucks in the offseason. Like, what do you feel about that?
I love it, man, and that's why I think prioritizing Lindholm makes sense, because you got to go for the star power. As much as I love Joshua, as much as I love Zadorov, what mistakes have we? The number one mistake that we've seen from NHL GMs is paying for secondary guys, paying for depth guys. I look at guys like Lindholm and potentially Gensel, and they could be part of your core. As much as I love Zadorov and Joshua, I don't think they're parts of the core moving forward. Now, you need big physical guys, and we see that in the postseason. But what's harder to find than that is elite offensive players, and Lindholm and Gensel fit that bill.
And man, star power, I'm into it too. And I hate bringing this up, but JT Miller being 31 is, I wouldn't say putting a lot of pressure on getting this done in a 2-year span, but it kind of is. It kind of is, man. It really is. And I think that is just the truth. Do I sound crazy for that, Trevor? Because you're laughing at me, but I don't think I sound crazy, man.
It's funny because I've done a lot of these articles too on like JT Miller and aging curves and who he compares to. I think you probably have a 3-year window with JT Miller right now. I don't know if he's going to be this player for another 3-4 seasons, but I think realistically at the level he's at, even if he dips a bit, I think you have a window of about 3 to 4 years with JT Miller. If you want to look at another window, it's probably the Quinn Hughes and Thatcher Demko contracts, right? Demko's got 2 years until his new deal. He's on a sweetheart deal. Quinn Hughes has 3 years left on his deal. So I think realistically, probably 3 years is the Canucks window right now. It could be longer, but I'm looking at 3 years.
Yeah. Again, a fascinating offseason coming up for the Vancouver Canucks. And yeah, maybe keeping Lindholm for a long period of time allows Miller to move to the wing in a couple of years. You know what I'm saying? To ease him into the next transition of his career and still be able to become an impact player for this team, possibly on the wing and not in the center. But yeah, that's like 2046 we're talking about. Anyway, so let's get back to the comments. When does the injury report come? Okay, this comes from Boom Scoom. I think it comes out tomorrow, if they're going to be honest about it. Okay, the exit meetings are tomorrow. Look at this comment from Blank Snake Stare. Okay, is this guy a firefighter? One love to you, man. What are you guys' thoughts on the leaked script that was on ESPN the day before Game 7, showing the Canucks lost? I don't really connect that to what really happened, okay? For real. I just feel as if the Canucks didn't have, I don't want to say the gas. I just feel as if they didn't have the experience to do what they needed to do in a critical Game 6/Game 7 situation where they had a chance to eliminate the Oilers. I know they did so against Nashville, but that was round 1, and that was Nashville. Remember, Nashville's third most impactful player in that series was Michael McCarron. You facing the Oilers, it was Evan Bouchard or Connor McDavid. Real talk. It was different, and they couldn't get it done. I'll say this too, okay? You know, Trevor, again, you can slap me across the face if I'm just getting too emotional, but the firefighter brought up Game 7. Sat brought up the management being ruthless after a quote-unquote heroic season, right? Here's Rutherford and Alvin potentially being ruthless and not bringing a lot of these guys back. I wonder how much that has to do with this team losing in round 2. I wonder how much it has to do with this team having guys like Zadorov and Joshua, alongside a lot of other guys, be non-factors in Game 6s and 7. For real. I think that has a lot to do with it, man. I think they looked at what Zadorov did in Game 6 and Game 7. They're like, you know what? This is why we can't keep this guy around for $6 million at 6 years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's funny too because you can spin the argument towards Lindholm as well. I think you and I are just both believing, based on Lindholm's track record, based on his the depth of his skill set, that he's worth keeping more so than Zadorov. Now Zadorov is such an exciting player. Joshua was an exciting player this season too, but yeah, I mean, those guys, you look at Joshua's stat line, it was 8 points in 13 games. It's like, damn, this guy played well. But what did he have? Like 5 of those points in 2 games or 6 of those points in 2 games, right? He was a non-factor for a lot of the playoffs. And Zadorov was a factor throughout. But yeah, it's just like, is this guy who he had his moments in the regular season where he was basically looking like Tyler Myers 2.0. Is that the guy you want to be paying like 6 times 6 to? That is a scary contract for me, as much as I love watching Nikita Zadorov play hockey.
It is a scary contract. I wouldn't be mad if they did it. I just kind of understand where some of this ruthlessness would come from. And it's because Rutherford and Alvin come from championship winning teams. Okay. So the second round is not satisfying to them. They're willing to change things around to get even further and not having an emotional attachment to, again, players that help them get to the second round of the NHL playoffs. And we're going to end it on this note. Okay. For real. Actually, we're going to end it on 2 notes, okay? This is from Sir Woj the Third, okay? Hronek would be the guy I would be least interested in spending cash on, okay? There was a report yesterday from Rick Dhaliwal. Again, this guy's one of the best podcasters in the world, but I don't know how many times this guy gets it right. He says a lot of things, okay? And supposedly, Philip Hronek still wants $8 million, okay? I don't believe that. I do not believe that. This guy had 12 points in his final 40 regular season games. He had maybe 2 points in 13 playoff games, if I'm correct, 2 or 3 points. There's no way this guy's coming out of that experience still demanding $8 million. And if that's the truth, no one, absolutely no one, other than the Atlanta Thrashers, is giving that guy that money. For real. For real, bro. Now, again, this connects with the other point I'm going to make, and I know you poo-pooed on it earlier, but I think the Canucks and Rutherford and Alvin want to keep Lindholm, and they're going to want to do the same with Hronek because they gave up a lot for these guys, okay? You're talking about 2 first-round picks. You're talking about a couple third-round picks. You're talking about Kuzmenko and a prospect. That's a lot of capital in your first couple of years to give up on a team that didn't even make the hasn't made the playoffs prior to this year. I don't know how you go to ownership and say we got to move these guys. Both of them, especially.
Yeah, it's going to be, again, a fascinating offseason ahead. And Kyle, maybe on tomorrow's episode, let's lay out the rest of the week quick. So,
Yeah,
Kyle and I we're aiming to be morning guys, maybe hop on
Yeah.
live around 8:30, 8:45. And I'm thinking if we do that for the next couple of days, tomorrow we'll do kind of like what an offseason looks like for your Vancouver Canucks, do some cap projections, contract projections. And then on Friday.
Can I cut you off there? Sorry. I know I called
Yep.
you earlier and said that we're going to go 8:30 tomorrow. I forgot I got a haircut tomorrow. My homie's getting married. So I got to be fresh. So I got a haircut at 10. But I think it's notable timing because at least we can do an episode after the exit meetings. And then next week, we'll get back to regular programming at 8:30 in the morning. Okay?
Yeah, there we go. So I think Thursday we'll do exit interview, what comes out of that. And then on Friday, we'll do what the perfect offseason looks like for your Vancouver Canucks. But for now, we got to get out of here. So shout out to the everydayers, occasional listeners, first-time listeners, and new subscribers, and those of you who join us on the live show on YouTube. It doesn't matter where you're listening, when you're listening. We just appreciate you for tuning into Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every day. The season's over, but Kyle and I, we ain't going anywhere, right? It's Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every day for eternity. You stuck with us now, bitches. But for now, okay, we got to get out of here. I'm Trevor Beggs. That guy's Kyle Bowen. And you've been listening to Locked On Canucks.
Look at James Moore with the final comment of the day, okay? Love your guys' content. You made this run so much fun. Keep it up. Hey, James Moore, we'll be given more effort this summer.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the